when we are speaking on that war, we have to understand where we are. What was the strategy of the West in that war? I simplify a little bit, but this is the fact. Our strategy was that the Ukrainians will fight and will win on the front line. The Russians will lose on the front line. And that lose will create a change in Moscow. There will be a new leadership, and we can negotiate. Putin is a world crimer, crime maker, whatever. And the new leadership will be acceptable as partner for negotiation to the European Union. That was the strategy. We finance, the Ukrainians fight and die. Where we are now, it's obvious that the Ukrainians will not win on the front line. There is no solution on the battleground. Russians will not lose. There will be no political change in Moscow. This is the reality.
This is my video update from Athens, Greece on this Monday, midday, November the 27th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. He was speaking in Switzerland, and Orbán said that Russia cannot be defeated, Ukraine will lose this war, and the collective West, what they need right now is a plan B, because plan A, according to Orbán, was that Ukraine would fight Russia, Russia would lose, the collective West would get regime change in Russia, they would negotiate a peace with the new acceptable government of Russia, and then I imagine, though Orbán did not say this, I imagine the plan then was to break Russia apart, balkanize it, and pillage and plunder Russia's resources. That was a statement from Orbán, not the pillaging, the breaking up of Russia and pillaging Russia's resources. I added that part in there, but that's where all of this was going to lead to. But Orbán did say that the plan from the European Union was for Ukraine to win and for regime change to occur in Russia. And then Orbán said that the collective West, what they need right now is a plan B, because Russia cannot be defeated and the Putin government will not collapse. I think what the collective West needs right now is a plan E or F, because they've tried plan A, they've tried plan B, they're maybe on plan C or D, and they don't have any more plans left. The Project Ukraine has been a complete disaster for the collective West, but it's very smart for Orbán to be making these statements about how the collective West has lost, the European Union has lost, their plan did not work out the way they were thinking it was going to work out, and that Russia cannot be defeated. It's very smart of Orbán to make these statements, because he's been the only leader in the collective West from the very beginning that has been saying that going to war with Russia is a terrible idea, and what Europe needs is they need a ceasefire with Russia, and the war has to end because it's doing a lot more damage to Europe than it's doing to Russia. Orbán has been the only world leader that has been saying that, and he senses a Ukraine collapse. He knows that the collective West and that the European Union has lost this conflict, and he is coming out in public and stating it more and more, because he wants to be on record to be the guy that said, I told you so. I told you that you guys were going to lose. I told you that it was in everyone's best interest to seek a ceasefire, to make Ukraine neutral, to not go to war with Russia. I told you guys this, but you didn't listen to me. All you did was demonize and attack me. Now you guys lost. Russia won. Haha, I told you so. So I think it's a smart move from Orbán to be saying this more and more in the public square. He is going to be the I told you so guy. And he was right. Orbán was right. Ursula and Jungle Joseph they were wrong, and Stoltenberg, they were wrong, and Orban can say, ha ha, I was right, you were wrong. And the collective West, though, they are not going to give up the grift that is Project Ukraine so easily. Maybe the conflict is over, but the grift, there's still a couple of $100 billion left in the grift that is known as Project Ukraine. And Senate Majority Leader for the Democrats, Mr. Chuck Schumer, he said that they're going to give the $106 billion funding package that Biden is trying to get through Congress. They're going to give it another go before the end of the year. And this package includes $61 billion to Ukraine, $15 billion to Israel, something like $15 billion for Taiwan, and like a couple of dollars for the border wall. And Schumer's like, we're going to give this another go to try and get this whole $106 billion package passed. Schumer said, one of the most important tasks we must finish is taking up and passing a funding bill to ensure we, as well as our friends and partners in Ukraine, Israel, and the Indo-Pacific region, have the necessary military capabilities to confront and deter our adversaries and competitors, Schumer said in a letter to senators on Sunday. So 3 wars, Ukraine, the Middle East, the war in Israel, and the Indo-Pacific, Taiwan, China. 3 wars that they need to fund. And Schumer understands, he said in the statement, that he understands that what's holding up all the money to these 3 wars is to give the border wall $5 or $10. The most important thing, he said, the senator for the Democrats, the majority leader for the Democrats, he is the majority leader, isn't he, Schumer? He said the most important thing that the Senate has to do right now is not give $106 billion to the American people, solve the border crisis with $106 billion, solve the homeless crisis, healthcare, education. I don't know. The most important thing for the American people is to give money to Ukraine, Israel, and the next war, which is Taiwan, China. An incredible statement from Schumer, but the word is that this is not going to get passed, not this year. Most likely, this will get passed in January. This is according to, I think, Bloomberg. They interviewed some Republican senators, and they said not this year. Most likely, it'll get passed in January. What they're going to do, it's going to be real simple. What they're going to do is they're going to pass something like, instead of giving the border crisis like $5, they'll give it like $1 billion. Right? So they'll give it $1 billion, they'll pass it, and with the border crisis solved, then they'll give maybe not $60 billion to Ukraine, but they'll give like $40 billion or $50 billion to Ukraine. They'll give $20 billion to Israel, and they'll give $20 billion for Taiwan, so they can get the Taiwan war going. They got to start up the 3rd war. After all, they have to confront the dictator known as Xi Jinping. So Z versus Z. Let's talk about Zelensky versus Zaluzhny. We had a Ukraine parliament member the other day say that Zaluzhny has to go. General Zaluzhny, if you believe that General Zaluzhny is alive and exists, he has to resign. This is according to Mariana Bejula, who is a member of the Ukraine parliament. She said in a statement, she's the deputy head of the parliament's National Security Committee. She said in a statement that Zaluzhny has to go because he has not provided a military plan for 2024. And I quote, this is what she said, Mariana Bejula. If the military leadership can't provide any plan for 2024, and if all their proposals for mobilization boil down to needing more people without any proposal for changes in the military system, then this leadership should step down. So Zaluzhny must go because he just doesn't have a plan. He's a man without a plan. And so he has to step down. Unlike Zelensky, who's a meticulous planner. Zelensky's a meticulous planner. Zaluzhny, if you believe he exists, he has no plan. He has no plan. It's his plan to mobilize 17 to 70-year-olds. It's his plan to mobilize women, so he has to resign. We all know that these are the orders that are being fed to Zelensky, not Zaluzhny. But they're going to put the blame on Zaluzhny because Zelensky wants to get rid of Zaluzhny, if you believe that Zaluzhny exists. And let's not forget that Zaluzhny was also the mastermind behind the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage, according to the collective West mainstream media. So we have this constant tension, this fight, the Z man versus the Z man, Z versus Z, Zelensky versus Zaluzhny, and I think we now understand how this fight started and what was the cause of this fight. And we know this because the second in command of Ukraine's intelligence, Mr. Danilov, he said that the reason for this tension, the reason for this fighting between Z versus Z is because of the Putin. The Putin. He is the person that has created this fight between the president of Ukraine and the amazing general of the Ukrainian armed forces. And the UK Times is reporting that Putin tells sleeper spies to trigger chaos in Kiev. According to the Times, Moscow has activated a network of sleeper spies in Ukraine in the past 2 months as Putin tries to destabilize society further in the face of military deadlock. Ukraine's national security advisor has said. Alexei Danilov said in an interview with the Times that dormant Russian agents embedded in public institutions, including the SBU, Ukraine's domestic security service, were being ordered to undermine the country's unity. Quote, they realize they cannot win this militarily, so attempts at internal destabilization have become the priority, he said. Wow. So, the Putin has realized that he cannot win this war. And so, the Putin is now stirring up tension between Zaluzhny and Zelensky. Zaluzhny and Zelensky were once best friends. They were best of buddies. And then Putin got in the way. The Putin got in the way, and he's caused the best friends to now be enemies. And he is tearing apart the Zelensky administration, the Putin. The Putin is to blame because Russia realizes they cannot win. So if what's going on in Ukraine right now on the front lines, in general for Project Ukraine, this proxy war, if this is Russia losing, I wonder what Russia winning looks like. I mean, my God, if according to Danilov, this is Russia realizing that it can't win the war, then what does Russia winning actually look like? Because to me, it seems like Russia is winning this conflict, this NATO proxy Ukraine conflict, pretty definitively. But hey, what do I know? This is the chief intel guy for Ukraine, and it's Putin that is creating the tensions between Zelensky and Zaluzhny. I wonder how Putin is doing that. The Putin. I wonder how the Putin is creating these tensions. Even if it is the Putin that's creating these tensions, that's created this fight, this now very public fight that everyone's talking about. If the Putin really did do it, that's a pretty smart move, I have to say. I mean, if he has that kind of power, then why not? That's a pretty brilliant chess move right there to get those two to fight. But how exactly did Putin accomplish this? The Putin. Got to remember, you got to call him the Putin because he's all powerful. The Putin, how did he do this? He awakened his sleeper spies, according to the UK media. Sleeper spies. Very interesting. How did Putin do such a thing? So, like the sleeper spies, according to Danilov, in this interview, they're part of the Zelensky administration. They're embedded in the Ukraine government and in the SBU. They're moles. They're moles buried deep inside the Zelensky government. These moles that are loyal to Putin. I imagine maybe they're like having lunch, like one of these spies is having lunch with Zelensky, and the spy goes to Zelensky and he goes, hey Volodymyr, you know, the whole counteroffensive didn't really go too well, did it? And Zelensky's like, no, it did not go very well at all. He goes, yeah, he goes, you know, Volodymyr, it wasn't your fault. Zaluzhny, he really messed up, didn't he? And Zelensky's like, yeah, it was Zaluzhny's fault, yeah. And by the way, Mr. President, I overheard Zaluzhny making fun of your green sweatshirt. He make fun of my green sweatshirt. How dare he? So Zelensky's now upset at Zaluzhny. And so the same spy, he's having lunch with Zaluzhny one day, and they're sitting down and they're having lunch, and the spy goes to Zaluzhny. He goes, Mr. General, that counteroffensive, it really didn't work out too well, did it? And Zaluzhny, if you believe that Zaluzhny's alive, Zaluzhny's like, yeah, the counteroffensive did not go too well. And so the spy goes to Zaluzhny and he says, yeah, you know, Mr. General, that was Zelensky's fault. He really messed up there. And Zaluzhny's like, yeah, that was Zelensky's fault. And then the spy goes, and you know what else, Mr. General? I heard Zelensky making fun of you. He was saying that you're a terrible general. And he was mocking you. Yeah. Zelensky was mocking me. That little clown puppet actor, I'm gonna get him. And then the two of them got upset with each other and they fought. And now they're in a big fight. And that's how the Putin operates. Oh man, it's like reminds me of like the movie Mean Girls or something, you know, like a high school drama. Oh boy, the Putin is all powerful, everybody. So the other day, Ukraine had a conference, which wasn't really reported on too much, and it had to do with Ukraine's grain corridor, the new grain corridor. This is the grain corridor that like hugs the coast of Romania. And according to Zelensky, this new grain corridor, the Russians will never attack this grain corridor because it's so close to Romania, and it's too risky for the Russians to attack this grain corridor. And they had this conference so that Zelensky can raise money and get security and insurance for the ships that are going to pass through this corridor, because Zelensky, he lost $500 million every month when the EU failed to honor the agreement of the original grain deal. And so he's trying to figure out a way to get money back into the coffers of Ukraine through the grain. And the name of this conference was Grain from Ukraine. Bravery feeds the planet. Interesting name. Grain from Ukraine. Bravery feeds the planet. Not food, not wheat, bravery. That's what feeds the planet. Bloomberg put out an article yesterday, and they're very worried about Africa because Russia is now providing free grain to many countries in Africa. And Bloomberg is sounding the alarm bell, saying that the countries of Africa, because they're getting this free food from Russia, the collective West risks losing the support of those countries in Africa because they're going to now side with Russia because Russia is giving them free food, no strings attached, free food. Anyway, Ukraine, they're having this conference, grain for Ukraine, and grain from Ukraine? Yeah, grain from Ukraine. Very catchy title. They're very good at that. The collective West, the Zelensky regime, they're very good at creating these cool names for their events. Bravery feeds the planet. Next time you're hungry, just go get some bravery. That'll fill up your belly. So, in attendance at this conference were really no big ticket names, no big draws. There was no Ursula von der Crazy, no Jungle Joseph, no Trudeau, not even a Kaya Kallas. Not even Kaya Kallas showed up to this event. Basically, it was attended by the president of Switzerland and I believe I want to say a high-level official from Latvia or Lithuania, but I'm not even sure about that. There were some officials from Latvia and Lithuania, and it was at this event, either before or after this event, where Zelensky, he laid out Ukraine's 3 big goals going forward for 2024, for the remainder of this year, for 2024. And you would think that one of the goals that Zelensky would lay out was a military goal, right? Build up our forces on the front lines. I don't know, increase the morale of the troops, something like that. I don't get more weapons, get more ammo. I don't know. Make the conditions better for the troops so they can achieve military tactical victory, something like that. But nope, that wasn't one of Zelensky's 3 major goals going forward. Let me read you a tweet from Zlati71. He outlines Zelensky's 3 big goals for the coming year. Zelensky said that Ukraine needs 3 victories. The first is to overcome the Congress and its differences, money. The second is to get support for 50 billion euros in aid, since not everyone in the EU is ready to support it, money. The third is to start a dialogue about Ukraine's membership in the EU, money. Zelensky did not mention the situation of the AFU at the front. He probably forgot. Exactly. Spot on, Mr. Zlati71. Spot on in that analysis. He doesn't even mention the armed forces of Ukraine and his three victories that are needed for his administration. It's all about money. Get Congress to approve the 60 billion, money. Get the EU to give Ukraine 50 billion, money, and to get Ukraine into the European Union, a lot of money. Money, money, money. Those are Zelensky's 3 goals. And on the front line, we are getting more reports that the Ukraine military is in crisis. According to Bild, crisis in the Ukrainian army. The counteroffensive has failed. The Russians are advancing. Now Ukrainian soldiers are speaking out in Bild, saying we have a huge problem. This is behind the paywall. This article from the German tabloid Bild. It was co-authored by Julian Ropske, who I believe is on the front lines with the Ukraine military. He's been with the Ukraine military for a good part of this war, and he's been a huge supporter of Project Ukraine. I mean, this guy is Zelensky's #1 fan, but to his credit, Julian is one of the few German collective West journalists who does report when things are going very bad for the Ukraine military. And in this article, behind the paywall, it looks like things are going very, very bad for the Ukraine military. Houston, we have a huge problem. That's pretty much what this article is saying. A huge problem on the front lines. And we are getting reports now about the tank situation in Ukraine on the front lines. Business Insider They ran an article the other day, and they said that all of these tanks given to Ukraine, the Leopards, the Challengers, even the Abrams tanks, and I'm going to get to the Abrams tanks very soon, all these tanks that were given to Ukraine that were going to be the wonder weapon that was going to drive back the Russian military and lead to the Russian military's collapse as the Ukraine military made its way to the Sea of Azov and eventually into Crimea. Well, all of these tanks, they have failed. They have made no difference in the conflict. Business Insider says that these tanks are not a magic weapon. They are not a magic weapon. No wonder weapon with these tanks. These tanks are still not a magic weapon, and now Ukraine must decide how best to use its limited arsenal in the face of winter, slow offensive operations, and an intensifying Russian offensive, according to Business Insider. And we are getting reports now that the Pentagon chief, Mr. Darth Vader Lloyd Austin, he is requesting, get this, Lloyd Austin is requesting that the Ukraine military give back the Abrams tanks. And in return, Lloyd Austin will just get Olaf Scholz to give over a few more Leopard tanks. These are just rumors, but I think these are very credible rumors and reports. The story goes that one of the things that Austin discussed with Zelensky when he was in Kiev last week was that the Abrams tanks get returned back to the U.S. because Lloyd Austin, his masters that control him in the military-industrial complex, they're very concerned that if the Abrams tanks actually saw like heavy fighting, they would get crushed by the Russian military if they even could make it to the front line, given how heavy the Abrams tanks are and given the mud and the conditions on the ground. The military-industrial complex masters of Lloyd Austin, they're very concerned that this is not going to be the best PR and marketing for the Abrams tanks. And so Lloyd Austin went to Kiev, and one of the things he asked of Zelensky was that Zelensky return the Abrams tanks, and Lloyd Austin was like, look, just give back those Abrams tanks, and we'll give you some more Leopards. Quite an incredible story, if true, but, you know, I believe it. Something tells me that this is true, because we already know that Rishi Sunak, he requested from Zelensky that the Challenger tanks not be used on the front lines. The Challenger tanks be used from a distance and just fire from a distance and not approach the Russian military, because the Russian military would just blow the Challenger tanks apart, and that would be very, very bad for the UK MIC. So we already know that the UK doesn't want to see the Challengers burn like the Leopards burn. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Lloyd Austin made the same request to Zelensky. Let's not see those Abrams tanks burn, because that's gonna be bad for the sales of tanks. And sticking with the UK, we had the Daily Mail.co.uk. Is that their IP address? dailymail.co.uk. Anyway, one of the biggest news collective West media outlets on the interwebs, they ran with the story, is it time to think the unthinkable for Zelensky and consider a peace treaty with Putin? As counteroffensive stalls, winter sets in, and the world focuses on Israel, military experts give their view. And so one would think, by reading the title from this story from the Daily Mail, which has been a huge supporter of Project Ukraine, and the Daily Mail is one of Zelensky's biggest fanboys, you would think that that interviewing the experts would say, look, enough death, enough destruction. Ukraine, being a military expert, Ukraine is clearly losing, and they're losing really, really bad. So we need to wind this thing down. At a very minimum, let's try to freeze this conflict and live another day to fight Russia. You would think that some of these military experts would say this, but no. The military experts did not say this. The military experts said that Zelensky should not negotiate with Russia and continue to fight. Under no circumstances should Zelensky negotiate with Russia, and what Zelensky needs to do is continue to fight on. The collective West needs to continue to support Ukraine in its fight with Russia. That is what the military experts said. This is what they said. Some of the experts that the Mail Online interviewed were people like Ben Hodges. Ben Hodges, military expert. I think Ben Hodges has the distinct honor of being the military analyst who has gotten just about every prediction connected to this war wrong. I mean, he has not gotten even one thing right, Ben Hodges, but they still consider him a military expert. And they interviewed other military experts who said that Ukraine and Zelensky should not sign any type of peace deals, including retired U.S. Army Brigadier General Kevin Ryan, who said, and I quote, he, in reference to Zelensky, he knows that Russia can't be trusted in any negotiation and that the Kremlin is playing the long game, hoping that the U.S. and other Western nations will pressure Ukraine to consider a peace treaty. The West has not fully awakened to the reality that we are at war with Russia. Ryan also says that the security of Ukraine and Western nations, especially Estonia, Lithuania, and Poland on NATO's eastern flank, would be in peril if Zelensky signed a peace deal. Ukraine is the first battlefield of Putin's war with the West, according to retired U.S. Army Brigadier General Kevin Ryan. I love how they always say, all of these collective West analysts, they always say that Russia can't be trusted, as if Russia has broken an agreement with the collective West, when the reality is that the collective West has broken every single agreement they have ever made, not only with Russia, but pretty much with most of the world. I mean, they have broken every single agreement, going back to not 1 inch to the east with NATO expansion, with Baker and Gorbachev back in the day, going to Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, and the grain deal and everything. Every single agreement that the collective West has signed up to, they've broken. Name me one agreement that Russia has broken. I mean, I can't think of one that Russia has signed and they've reneged on that agreement. I can't think of one. Maybe there is, but I can't think of it. So I always find it interesting when they say that Russia can't be trusted, when it's the collective West that doesn't honor any agreements that they sign up to. But I find it also interesting that they always talk about how if there's a ceasefire in Ukraine, well, then Putin will be emboldened to invade Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, which to me doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, when you look at a map, you see that Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania and Poland to a certain degree, but definitely the Baltic states are right next door to Russia, right next door. So 2 years ago, say Russia really wanted to conquer, to take over Latvia and Estonia, right next door to Russia, like right smack next door. Say that Russia really did want to take over these two Baltic nations 2 years ago, before the conflict in Ukraine started. Then why would Russia waste its time with Ukraine? Well, I mean, how does going through Ukraine? You go through Ukraine and then you go up again to go towards Poland and then towards the Baltic states? That seems like it's a pretty difficult task in order to conquer the Baltic nations. Why would you go through Ukraine and then go back up again to conquer Poland and the Baltic nations when you have the Baltic nations right next to you? If Russia really wanted to take the Baltic nations, they're right there. Why even bother with Ukraine? But hey, that's the argument that these military experts, always throw out there. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. So let's see here. There's another article from the Telegraph, by the way, which says that the West is losing the artillery race, or the West has already lost the artillery race. How the West lost the artillery shell race and what it means for Ukraine. The article says that the AFU produces 6,155 mm shells every day. Russia produces 20,000 units a day, which is equal to the amount of ammunition that European countries produce in a month. Not bad for a gas station masquerading as a country, huh? Not bad at all. Russia produces a lot of shells. They also produce a lot of shovels and a lot of washing machines. And then we have the Mirotvorets, the peacemaker site in Ukraine. They have placed Polish politician Rafał Meckler on their list. I think this politician is part of the Polish Nationalist Party. What's the name of that party? The Confederation Party, I think, is what it's called. Not quite sure. I forgot the name, but I think he's a member of that party. Anyway, he's been placed on Mirotvorets. That's not going to help in the relations between Ukraine and Poland, which are already in a very bad state. They were once BFFs, Poland and Ukraine, but now not so much. I imagine that Zelensky is in his room at night, lying on his bed in his room, and he's just kind of dreaming about the better days when he and Duda were BFFs, and he's just lying there, remembering those days when Duda would arrive in Kiev and Duda would hug him and Zelensky would hug Duda back. And it was the best of times. And now Zelensky misses Duda. I miss you, Andres. I miss you very much. I wonder if Duda is also lying in his bed at night saying, what went wrong with Volodymyr? Where did things go wrong with Volodymyr? All right, let's shift gears now and let's do a quick update on what is happening in Israel. And I've done a lot of stories over the past week about how the Biden White House hates Netanyahu and how Netanyahu hates Bidenopolis, and how the Biden White House has two options for the war in Israel at this moment in time. Either they have to work with Netanyahu and to try to convince Netanyahu to see things the way the Biden White House sees things with the war in Israel, and that includes the actual strategy of the war. That includes the peacekeeping force that Anthony Blinken wants to put in place after the war. All of these things that the Biden White House wants to see happen in Gaza and in Israel, and they're trying to get Netanyahu to do as they tell him to do. And the other option is for the Biden White House is to just maneuver Netanyahu out, because Netanyahu isn't playing ball with the Biden White House, at least not fully. And so I've been talking about this tension between the Biden White House and Netanyahu, and it looks like, given the media reports from yesterday, as the 4-day ceasefire wraps up, I believe today is the final day of the 4-day ceasefire. As this ceasefire wraps up, we are now seeing articles from the collective West mainstream media, which is very, very friendly to Joe Bidenopolis, Greece's favorite son. They are reporting about how Netanyahu must go. That is what the mainstream media is now reporting. Reuters says this: facing criticism over his failure to prevent the Hamas infiltration of Israel on October 7th, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has largely avoided the limelight while conducting a two-front war, one against Hamas and the other for his own political survival. The title of this Reuters article is Netanyahu's two-front war against Hamas and his own political survival. That is coming from Reuters. And then the Washington Post, which is super, super friendly to the Biden White House. They ran an article yesterday with the title, Netanyahu and Hamas depended on each other. Both may be on the way out. Both may be on the way out. Listen to that. That is the policy of the Biden White House in a nutshell. That is what the Biden White House wants to achieve at this moment with regards to Israel and Gaza and the Middle East and this entire conflict. Their off-ramp to this conflict is to get Netanyahu out and to find a way to get Hamas out. That's the policy. That's their policy goal, and the Washington Post is just coming out and saying that. So, I think the analysis over the past week or two is being confirmed by the collective West mainstream media. Biden wants Netanyahu gone. And now the media, they're starting to run stories about how Netanyahu is to blame for everything that has happened. Netanyahu is not managing the war in a proper way, in a right way, and not in the way that the Biden White House would like Netanyahu to run this war. And Netanyahu is not listening to the Biden White House, so he has to go. That's going to be the narrative from the collective West mainstream media over the next week or two. That's what I think we're going to start to see. And just yesterday, we saw the articles criticizing Netanyahu starting to come out from the collective West media. So let's do a clown world. And in this clown world, we had a Russian television show yesterday. They started a segment to talk about the border crossings being closed by Finland. And this Russian television show, I forgot the name of this show, but it's one of these evening TV talk shows. The host was talking about all of the different border crossings that have been closed, and he basically said that right now there's only like one border crossing that is open, and he showed a map of the route now from St. Petersburg to Helsinki, and let me put it up on the screen. That's the route that was highlighted on this Russian TV talk show, and I think we all see what that looks like. And the Ukraine media and the Ukraine supporters, like the NAFO guys and all of these people on social media, they mocked this image because they said Russian TV is showing a D pic as the only opening for the border crossing to St. Petersburg and Helsinki. I thought this was funny. I thought this is funny, and I think it actually sums up the situation at the border. And if anything, it shows how effed up the policy in Finland is with regards to this border closing. I mean, Finland, they really effed it up, and the picture kind of represents that. The Ukraine analysts, they make it as if Russia is being ridiculous, or this is like a clown world against Russia, and maybe it is. The photo is pretty funny, but more than anything, it represents how screwed up the situation is at the border between Finland and Russia. So I thought that was funny. It made its way on TV, and it's a funny graphic. But since we're talking about graphics, on Ukraine television the other day, they were running a show about. They were talking about the conflict and the war, and on the crawler, on the TV, I forgot what it's called. What is it? Chiron? Is that what it's called? The ticker, the little ticker underneath the interview that's taking place. It actually said that the Ukraine military has suffered 1.1 million dead and missing personnel. That is what this ticker, this crawler, was scrolling as this interview was taking place on Ukrainian TV. 1.1 million dead and missing. And Zelensky's office, they called up the TV station, from what I understand, and they complained about this number flashing across the screen. And the TV channel had to apologize for what it called a typo. And I think this was real. I think this was probably an accurate number. Why do I say that? Why do I think this is not a typo? Because the very next day, the Ukraine Ministry of Defense, they come out and they say that Russia has lost 324,830 troops in Ukraine. That's the total number of troops since the beginning of the special military operation that has been lost, according to the General Staff of Ukrainian Armed Forces. So you can see that there's a bit of panic in the Zelensky regime because this number was flashed across the screen. So the TV channel, they apologize, they call it a typo, and then the very next day, the Ukraine military, they come out with a story about Russian casualties to take away the attention of this 1.1 million number of Ukrainian losses. That's why I think this number is accurate. And I think that's it. I think that's the clown world. We will leave it there. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. 20% off. Use the code TheDuran20. Take care.